Part 1, Chapter 1. For thousands of years, the thinkers of our world have endeavored to describe not only who we are as a species, but where we come from, why we are here, and where we are going. It was not until our relatively recent history when science progressed to the point where we came to understand that the universe, in fact, does not revolve around us. Rather, we occupy a relatively minuscule cloister in the universe, a fairly small cog in the vast and tremendously varied machine of cosmology. The truth of the matter, though, is what we know, or rather what we think we know, isn't even close to the reality of the universe. Perhaps one of the most important things we as a species have figured out is that the best way to unlock the secrets of the universe is to do so through the one language common to any intelligent life that may or may not exist in the vastness of deep space: mathematics. If intelligent life does exist in the vast and unfathomable reaches of space, then hopefully we will be prepared to communicate on a level slightly better than the grunts and shrieks of our animal friends here on Earth. The truth of the matter, though, is that not only does life exist in places other than on Earth, and not only is that life intelligent, but the universe is actually teeming with life in every corner. Mankind hasn't discovered this personally since our technology hasn't progressed to the point of traversing large distances quickly. But it is easy to see that soon enough there will be the cosmological equivalent of a Starbucks coffee shop on every inhabited corner of our vast galaxy, the Milky Way. One of our closer neighbors in the cosmos is a galaxy we call the Large Magellanic Cloud, although the inhabitants of that particular galaxy generally have much more imaginative names for their home. This story centers around one small corner of that galaxy and one particular civilization found there, which progressed to the point where it could spread out to many of the star systems surrounding its home planet. This planet, a true jewel in the heavens, not only due to its aesthetic beauty, but also to the inner beauty of its enlightened inhabitants, is none other than the amazing planet called Galimar. From the viewpoint of space, you would be forgiven for thinking Galimar is a planet much like Earth. However, natural features of the planet as well as the history of how the Galimarian people progressed over time are much different than the same of Earth. Unlike humans, their culture didn't experience the same dark ages as humans did. Imagine what life on Earth would be like now if humans had experienced the Industrial Revolution over 1,000 years ago. Much of that difference can be attributed to their biology, but more about that later. The Galimarians are a race of explorers. Early in their social and technological development, they figured out how much joy they derived from the simple act of discovery. Once the joy of discovery and learning was fully embraced, the Galimarians embarked on quite a lot of it. Their first forays into discovery centered exclusively on their own biology, as well as the planet where they lived. While much of Galimar is quite similar to Earth, some key differences set it apart as exceptionally amazing and spectacular. The hanging natural gardens of Amular, the gravity wells of Mysticon, or the two species of sentient sea creatures living in their oceans. After some time, technology progressed such that the Galimarian people could stretch out and explore their local cosmic neighborhood. They first visited each of their 5 moons, whose existence was eventually discovered as part of the reason for the gravity wells of Mysticon. As their technology progressed further and further, and as they were able to travel farther and farther in their local solar system, they successfully established colonies on other planets in their own solar system. Eventually, they devised technologies that allowed them to visit other solar systems. So that is what they did. Some of that technology made it possible to create ships that could travel extremely fast. And with these ships, the Galimarians were able to discover they, in fact, weren't the only forms of higher life in the universe. As they started encountering various races, they deeply enjoyed such interaction until one particular experience every Galimarian would rather forget. One planet they discovered had a bipedal race on it called Traxus. The Traxians were not as advanced technologically, but they were quite gregarious and congenial. Over time, the Galimarians progressively shared much of their technology with the Traxians, and for a while, the relationship with the two planets went well, until some on the Traxian planet used that technology to wage a civil war. Eventually, all life on the Traxian planet, except for a few refugees who came to Galimar, was completely extinguished. The events of Traxus hit the Galimarian people hard, very hard. They came to realize that Traxian social evolution hadn't evolved alongside this new technology. Therefore, the Traxians weren't responsible enough to handle the great power that came from possessing it. After much deliberation, the Grand Council of Galimar passed amendments to the testimonial law, a set of laws which formed the basis of their government, forbidding the sharing of technology with any civilization that hadn't progressed to the same point as Galimar. This pungent footnote in their history always guided how the Galimarians interacted with other races they encountered from that point onward. Their own technology progressed over time, but that technology was no longer shared with any other races, except for rare circumstances. Even then, it could only be with direct approval from the Galimarian Grand Council. Eventually, the day came when this policy was tested. There were a set of Galimarians who had visited a planet called Britaria, and these Galimarians had a difference of opinion with the isolationist philosophy of their home world. As they continued to spend time on this new planet, many of these Galimarians fell in love with some of the inhabitants of that planet. They became emotionally involved with those people and wished to share all they had with them. This was in direct opposition to the Grand Council, who had ruled Britaria could not benefit from Galimarian technology. This laid the groundwork for a tempest between those who remained loyal to the Grand Council of Galimar and those who lived with the people of Britaria. When it became apparent and provable that these explorers were going to share Galimarian technology with Britaria, they were apprehended, tried, convicted, and sentenced to live the rest of their lives on Britaria. This sentence was quite acceptable to them, until learning they would be left there without the benefit of any Galimarian technology. A bitter pill for them to swallow, but one that was just and benevolent nonetheless. For the most part, Galimar can be considered a society ruled by the people. All aspects of Galimarian government are defined in a series of documents referred to as the Testimony of Galactic Land and Maritime Law. These documents, commonly referred to as the Testimony, were originally penned thousands of years ago and have guided the peaceful and explorative culture of Galimarian society. The Testimony is regarded as a living document, since changes may be needed from time to time, as was the case with Traxus. All guidelines outlined in these documents are referred to as testimonial law. According to testimonial law, the government of Galimar doesn't have any single figurehead, but rather has what is referred to as the Grand Council, currently made up of the 281 oldest Galimarians in existence at any given time. The actual number doesn't necessarily need to be 281. However, testimonial law dictates that the number of members of this body must be odd so as to facilitate a tiebreaker vote if needed. Changes to the actual number of the council members in place at any time must be voted upon and agreed to by all members. Since all votes are tendered anonymously, the identity of the tiebreaker, if there is one, is always unknown. With few exceptions, there must be a simple majority for any vote to pass. Even though there is no single figurehead in the government, there is a coordinator for the Grand Council, but his or her duties apart from the council are severely limited. The duties are more administrative, and they generally involve making sure all necessary notices are delivered to all Grand Council members. If there is a matter that needs to come to the attention of the council, he or she is the point of contact for any Galimarian who wishes to be heard. The coordinator does not have the latitude to decide what is heard, but rather is bound by law to allow any Galimarian voice in council chambers, if such is desired. His or her only responsibility is to call the council to order to consider the matter. One of the main tenets of testimonial law is that there is nothing off limits to Grand Council inquiry, examination, and approval or denial. While crime is noticeably absent, there is the occasional individual who goes against council decisions, as was the case with the planet of Britaria. On the rare occasion of judgment against crime, each case is considered on its own merits, and the application and degree of punishment are decided upon by a 3/4 majority vote from the council. Our story begins in the capital of Galimar, with one particular Galimarian named Eobach Aramin, a dreamer, a poet, and a master interstellar spaceship designer. Eobach had an idea for a mission of exploration which would take Galimarians much farther than ever attempted before. But before he could go, he needed to convince the Grand Council of Galimar to approve the mission.